Welcome to the second of the series of videos on foundations in audit within the ACCA's FIA qualification. This time we will discuss the issue of the requirements that are placed in front of the auditors. We mentioned it in the first video that auditors must remain independent. Now in this video we will discuss that independence, we will talk about it and explain the meaning of the concept in detail. Now you see the definition on the screen. Independence is freedom from situations where objectivity would be perceived to be impaired by a reasonable and informed third party. So independence is all about maintaining objectivity. Auditors will look at the financial statements of a company. They are supposed to verify that those financial statements show true and fair view of the operation of this company, and they must do it objectively. They must maintain objectivity, which can be impaired, to give you the simplest example, if those financial statements were prepared by the auditor's sister. And in fact, it doesn't even matter whether the auditor likes his sister or not, because in both cases his objectivity might be considered to be impaired. Now, importantly, if you see there's the word perceived. So the auditor must not only be independent, which is his own state of mind, but he also needs to be seen as independent. Now this is important. It's not only about the fact that I feel comfortable with my sister preparing the financial statements that I will audit. I am sure this will not impair my objectivity. This doesn't really matter, because if there is any third party that would think, no, after all it's your sister, so I'm sure this might have had some impact on the way you audited the financial statements. If there is a third party like that, the auditor is not seen as independent and therefore should not perform the audit. International Federation of Accountants defines 5 key threats to independence of an auditor. The first one of them is self-interest threat. Under the self-interest threat, the auditor's independence might be impaired because of his own business, investments, or relationships that might be impaired or might lose value if the financial statements of the company do not show good financial results. Now consider, for example, if an auditor is a shareholder in the company. Quite obviously, that auditor will be biased towards showing good financial results. Similarly, if the auditor is a lender to the company, again, the auditor would like the financial statements to look good. He would like to see the profit in those financial statements. And believe it or not, it is easier to become a lender than you think. Because after all, if the auditor sends some invoices to the audited company and they remain unpaid, the auditor becomes a lender to the company. Another threat is a self-review threat. That might happen when financial statements contain information that was somehow prepared by the auditor. The auditor might have, for example, in the past provided some valuation services on items of property or on companies if there were business combinations. Now, if those values are audited by the same auditor, the auditor will be biased towards saying, well, I'm sure these valuations are right because our people did them. Now, that's not the approach that should be taken by an independent auditor. Advocacy threat is when the auditor wants to support the client's view too much. There may be a number of reasons for that. For example, the auditor may want to get some other work from the client in the future. He might know, for example, that there will be some valuations, there might be some bookkeeping services on the horizon, or tax advice, and because of that, the auditor does not want to question the client's views too much. Number 4 is familiarity. The auditor will not be perceived independent if the auditor is too close with the client's stuff. That may be in the form of friendly get-togethers, playing golf together too much, attending parties, and these sort of situations. Now, again, it's about the perception, being seen as independent. The familiarity should be something that the auditor should have in mind, not to get too close to the client. The last one is intimidation. Now that happens actually quite a lot. This is where the client puts a pressure on an auditor by threatening the auditor in a direct or indirect way. There may be a number of ways in which the client may impose threats. He might say to the audit manager that if that audit manager does not do something as the client says, the client will file a report with their employer that they behave unprofessionally, or something like that. Any case of intimidation should be immediately reported to the supervisors of an auditor, so that the head auditor, called the partner, can make a decision whether they want to continue with this client anymore. Because quite obviously, you must really think whether you want to have a person that places threats against your staff as a client. Now, these are the 5 threats to independence, and in order to reduce their impact, the auditor will place safeguards. These safeguards are placed at the level of the profession. So, for example, not everyone can become an auditor, right? You have to pass exams, you have to show your ability to behave ethically, you have to continuously upgrade your skills afterwards. Then there will be some safeguards at the level of an audit firm. The firm will have work practices that will detect any possible cases of problems with independence. Recruitment in the firm should only attract people of high ethical standards, people who are capable of learning and applying the rules that are binding for the auditors. And finally, the firm should impose some oversight procedures so that any case of potential independence will be detected within the audit team. And finally, the individual is also responsible for maintaining his or her independence. First of all, he or she should know what the professional bodies say, what the requirements of their bodies are. They should continuously increase their skills in order to also know what is expected, what is not acceptable. These safeguards help auditors maintain independence.